Hey guys, tonight we begin our slow descent into stone and silence. You're standing at the edge of dawn with cool mist brushing your cheeks, the color of old ash and faded secrets. The air is unusually still, like even the birds are holding their breath, as you face the massive steps of the Temple of the Moon in Teotihuacan. The stones loom above you, quiet and unmoving, but somehow watching. You're not quite sure how long you've been standing here, but the longer you wait, the more the structure feels aware. This isn't just a pile of rock. It's a blueprint of something. Power, precision, maybe paranoia. The moon still hangs low behind the temple's peak, bathing everything in a silvery glow that flattens the modern world behind you. It's as though time has dropped its usual formality and whispered, "Fine, just for tonight. Let's pretend none of that future stuff ever happened." You shift your weight onto the first step. It groans a little, but it holds. Good omen. Probably not. But hey, you probably wouldn't survive this if it was 200 CE anyway. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You climb slowly. The steps are worn smooth by time and footfall, but every few meters there's one that dips strangely. Too much pressure over centuries or something. Heavier? You can't help imagining the thousands of people who walked these same stones, robes brushing their ankles, hands full of obsidian blades or clay offerings. Some of them made it back down. Not all. Near the top, the view spreads wide. You're looking out over the Avenue of the Dead, flanked by pyramids and ruins stretching toward the horizon like bones laid bare. The scale is ridiculous, beyond human. That's the first clue, really. Teotihuacan doesn't feel designed for people. It feels designed to impress someone else. Historians still argue whether the city's sheer scale was meant to awe gods, aliens, or simply kings with really big egos. But you, standing here in the eerie quiet, can't shake the feeling that whoever built this wasn't just trying to reach the heavens. They were trying to control them. And that's when you notice the chill. Not from the wind. It's seeping up through the stones, faint but undeniable, like a breath from something sleeping underfoot. You step back from the edge of the platform and glance down the center of the temple. There's nothing visibly different, no cracks, no light, but your spine tells you that something is buried down there. Something not quite dead. They discovered it by accident, of course. That's how the best secrets tend to go. In 2018, archaeologists found a tunnel under the Temple of the Moon. Perfectly sealed. No indication from the surface. Like it was meant to be forgotten. You feel your feet shift slightly, no movement. Just imagination. Still, your hand tightens on your side. Maybe it's the altitude. Maybe it's the story breathing itself into your head. Maybe it's something older than both. You sit down at the edge of the step, feeling the warm stone under you slowly cool. The sun's not up yet, but its promise is visible in the thinnest stripe of violet light on the far side of the horizon. In the quiet, you can almost hear it. Not voices, not words, just presence. The pyramid waiting beneath the pyramid. Something layered beneath everything you see. And perhaps something waiting for someone to find it. Section 2. You shift your weight and begin to walk along the upper terrace of the Temple of the Moon, where the air grows thinner and more ancient with every step. Below, the Avenue of the Dead stretches out in straight lines, unnaturally perfect. You squint against the slowly brightening sky. There's no randomness here. No cozy street corners. No scattered chaos of a city born out of need. It's symmetrical, coldly so, as if designed not for living but for demonstration. Teotihuacan isn't just a city, it's a performance. And the audience? That part is still up for debate. You pause at the edge of the platform, letting your gaze rest on the Pyramid of the Sun in the distance. It mirrors the Moon Temple, only larger, louder, like an older sibling always trying to outshine. But it's the Moon Temple that hides things. Always quieter, always underestimated. The city's massive layout, its obsession with straight lines and alignment, has led some researchers to believe it was designed to mimic the cosmos. Not symbolically, but structurally, like a cosmic machine. You let that idea settle into your bones while you peer down at the stone. The slab under your feet is smooth, but just to the left, there's a rectangle of rock that's ever so slightly misaligned. You crouch to touch it, and even though you know it's just stone, your fingers tingle like static. You're standing right above where the hidden tunnel was found. In 2018, a team using electrical resistance scanners detected the presence of a void beneath the temple. A tunnel, carefully hidden, curving inward like a spiral? Sealed centuries ago. Probably more, it wasn't part of the usual layout. It was secret by design. Historians still argue whether the tunnel was built first, before the visible pyramid, or if it was added later as some form of protection, or worse, containment. You trace the layout in your mind. The Moon Temple was built in phases. The visible structure, just the outermost skin. Underneath, archaeologists have found multiple construction layers, each one covering the last like a shell, or like a burial shroud. That's where the mystery starts to sharpen. Most pyramids are built up. This one was buried down, which raises the question, were they hiding something? Or sealing it in? You stand again, imagining the city as it might have looked. Lush paint on every wall, statues of jaguars and gods at every intersection, processions of dancers with feathers taller than you are, winding their way up these very stairs. And beneath it all, stone passageways meant only for the initiated. Some believe the tunnel is a symbolic path into the underworld. Others think it leads to a chamber where rituals once took place. And a third, much weirder theory, that it's not a tunnel at all, but a map. A three-dimensional representation of the universe as the Teotihuacanos understood it. You look down at your own feet again, imagining the earth beneath you not as dirt and bedrock, but as code. A language no one's cracked. A locked diary that's kept its secrets long past the fall of its author. You turn slightly and glance back at the Pyramid of the Sun. It rises in the soft morning haze like a distant thought. Imposing, yes, but it's the Moon Temple that you can't stop thinking about. There's something backwards here, like the story was written in reverse, or like you walked into a play halfway through and no one's offering you a script. And maybe that's exactly the point. You close your eyes for a moment. The breeze shifts, just enough to lift the edge of your sleeve and carry the scent of dust and time to your nose. You could almost swear it smells like burned incense. Or something sweeter. Offerings. Centuries old, maybe. Still lingering. Suddenly you imagine what it must have felt like to be the one sealing the tunnel. Last torch in hand. One final breath of air before the stones were pushed into place. Not fear, not triumph. Just the weight of purpose. And maybe a whisper in the dark that said, "You shouldn't have come here." You take one slow step back. Nothing moves, the earth doesn't shake, but the feeling remains that something is beneath you. Quiet, still, waiting. You descend the steps slowly now, your hand grazing the ancient wall beside you as if it might whisper secrets back. The cold smoothness of the stone feels unnatural, too, even for something shaped by wind and time alone. And it is here, at ground level, where the weight of the mystery grows heavier, like the temple is pressing its silence against your chest. You turn toward the northern edge of the plaza, following the faint outlines of ancient foundations etched into the earth. From here, you begin to grasp the overwhelming scale of the site, not just in size, but in intention. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't built piece by piece out of necessity. Teotihuacan was designed with purpose and, perhaps, precision. Archaeologists have long noted the strange orientation of the city. Unlike other Mesoamerican cities that aligned with cardinal directions, Teotihuacan is tilted about 15 degrees east of true north. It's not a construction flaw, it's not drift, it's deliberate. The city aligns with celestial events, specifically the setting of the Pleiades and the rising of certain constellations. You imagine the original planners looking to the stars, mapping not just a city, but a mirror. And this temple, the one you just climbed, was the lunar counterbalance to its solar sibling across the avenue. A duality? A dialogue? The moon, they believed, governed the underworld, and so beneath it they built something hidden. Something sacred, or perhaps something dangerous. Historians still argue whether this alignment was purely astronomical or whether it symbolized a deeper belief system, an ancient form of cosmological control. Was Teotihuacan a calendar? A machine for syncing with the heavens? Or was it just really into good geometry? You reach a spot where a low stone wall juts from the soil, half buried and oddly shaped. It's an entryway, now closed off, but once it may have led down into the earth. The tunnel they found in 2018 cuts directly below this spot. Not a random shaft, but an intentional descent. A spiral design, as if leading inward, not just down. You imagine entering it now, holding a torch, the heat licking your wrist. The stone walls sweat with old breath. The smell? Earth, copper, something metallic. And then it hits you. Mica. Yes, mica. They found layers of mica embedded into the tunnel walls. Not decorative, not common, not native to this part of Mexico. It had to be brought from Brazil, thousands of miles away. And you can't help but ask, why? Mica is reflective, heat-resistant. Some suggest it was used for insulation. Others say it was symbolic, representing water, stars, or the boundary between worlds. But the theory that chills your skin the most, that it was used as part of an energy system. An ancient technology meant to harness something. You step back from the ruined wall and glance up once more at the looming temple. Its surface catches the early morning sun just enough to glow faintly golden. But beneath? Mica. Layers of it, hidden from sight. Teotihuacan wasn't just built to last. It was built to speak. To stars, to gods, maybe even to us. But in a language we still haven't learned to read. A breeze kicks up dust around your feet, and for a moment you imagine the whispering returns. Not voices, not exactly, but presence. A sense that something buried down there is aware of your interest. You laugh quietly to yourself. Maybe it's just the lack of sleep. Maybe it's the ancient caffeine kicking in from whatever herbal tea the street vendor insisted would open your third eye. Still, you don't step any closer. Instead, you reach into your pocket and feel the small, smooth stone you picked up earlier. It's ordinary, unmarked. But something about it makes you want to keep it. Like it knows where it came from. Like it's waiting to be returned. You walk along the path that borders the temple, the sun now fully risen, casting long shadows across the plaza. Every step feels like you're retracing someone else's. Someone who walked this route not to visit, but to guard. Some believe the city was abandoned because of drought. Others blame war, but no records explain it clearly. No documents, no written farewell. Just a city left behind, perfectly intact. Like someone pulled the plug on an experiment, or sealed away a warning. You follow the worn path further, rounding the backside of the Moon Temple where fewer tourists tread. The stones here are quieter, like they've seen things but have no interest in telling. They press against the soles of your shoes with a kind of weary memory, and for a moment, the breeze stills completely. The silence becomes thick enough to hear your own breath. It's here that you begin to wonder about the tunnel's contents, not just where it leads, but what was deliberately placed inside. The 2018 excavation revealed more than architecture. It revealed an order, a peculiar logic to the buried objects arranged in layers like a cosmic recipe. You crouch near a sunken alcove. It might have once held a statue. Now it holds only a nest of dry leaves and a few brave ants. Still, your imagination fills in the gaps. Elaborate jade masks, obsidian blades, seashells from far-off shores. And bones, always bones. What unnerved researchers wasn't just what was there, it was how it was placed. Deliberate, symmetrical, careful. Like someone had been building a message in code. Human remains weren't tossed in carelessly. They were posed, curated, sometimes even wrapped. Historians still argue whether these were sacrificial victims, honored dead, or something else entirely. The presence of animal remains, precious stones, and clay figurines arranged with mathematical precision suggests a kind of offering. But an offering to what? You stand again and close your eyes. A cool breeze slips beneath your collar and your mind fills with images. Rows of priests with painted faces, carrying bundles wrapped in bark and feathers. The tunnel, then freshly dug, yawns open like a mouth waiting for secrets. You imagine one priest hesitating, not out of fear but reverence. The final bundle rests in his hands, a jaguar figurine coated in cinnabar. Red dust clings to his fingers like old blood. He steps inside, his sandals silent against the mica floor. A breath, a chant, a whisper to something waiting in the dark. And then silence. The bundle is placed. The priest exits. The tunnel is sealed, stone by stone, never to be opened again. Until, of course, someone did. You blink back to the present, half expecting to see an archaeologist standing nearby, brushing off another mystery, but there's no one. Just the temple, just the wind, just the nagging thought that perhaps the tunnel was never meant to be rediscovered. One of the more fringe theories, whispered among certain circles, suggests the tunnel wasn't just ceremonial. It was corrective. That something had gone wrong above, and this was their way of fixing it. Not by erasing it, but by sealing it. A kind of spiritual quarantine. You glance back toward the center of the plaza. Tourists are beginning to trickle in now. Selfie sticks bobbing like antennae, bright shirts blinking like pixels in the old world. It feels wrong. Not because of them, but because of the contrast. They're walking above centuries of silence, centuries of purpose, unaware of what sleeps beneath their feet. You head toward a shaded stone bench tucked beneath a tree. It's newer, modern even, but the shadow it offers feels old. You sit, letting your fingers rest on the stone beside you. The coolness seeps into your skin like memory. The excavation team reported more than just artifacts. They spoke of humidity in the tunnel, of strange echoes that didn't match their own voices. One even described a moment where the light from his headlamp flickered. Not failed, just pulsed, as if something else had blinked in reply. You chuckle. It could have been nerves, low blood sugar, or maybe just the tunnel saying hello. You remember the phrase one archaeologist used in an interview. We are not unlocking a tomb, we are interrupting a conversation. And maybe that's what this pyramid beneath the pyramid really is, a message. Not to us necessarily, but from someone or something. And we're just eavesdropping centuries too late. You rise from the stone bench slowly, as if shaking off the weight of something that had settled there beside you. The wind returns, soft this time, not unsettling, almost like it's ushering you forward. You turn your gaze once more to the moon temple, but this time your attention shifts downward. Beneath everything, into the deeper layers. That's where the pyramid within the pyramid comes into focus. In 2021, a series of ground-penetrating radar scans revealed something curious. Under the Temple of the Moon, there wasn't just a tunnel, but a possible substructure, like a smaller pyramid buried within the larger one. A Matryoshka doll of stone, sealed in secrets. The idea itself isn't unusual. Many Mesoamerican pyramids were built in layers, each new ruler covering the old with a grander monument. But here, something's different. The innermost structure is positioned off-center, subtly misaligned from the one above. You imagine building a house, then burying it under a second one, but just slightly askew, not accident, intention. Historians still argue whether this misalignment is symbolic, architectural, or something stranger. Was it designed to mirror shifting stars? Was it meant to confuse looters? Or perhaps, as some quietly suggest, it was part of a ritual geometry, an effort to align two worlds, not two floors. You close your eyes and imagine what this sub-pyramid might contain. No doorways, no paths, just sealed chambers. Within, more offerings, more mica, maybe a vault of obsidian mirrors used to reflect the soul back at itself. Or maybe nothing at all, just the space, the emptiness. And still, it would hum. You continue walking, letting your feet trace an arc around the base of the temple. To your left, small hills rise like silent guards. Excavation sites covered in tarps and netting, tools laid out like surgical instruments. This is where the work continues, slow, deliberate, respectful. You pass a sign in Spanish and English, Zona Restringida, no pasar. But your eyes drift past the warning to the tarped mound behind it. Just earth on the outside, but beneath? A foundation older than the city itself. That's the thing no one talks about enough. Teotihuacan may have been built on the bones of something earlier. Something older. Some believe the Moon Temple was erected atop a sacred site already known to the indigenous people who came before. A cave, perhaps, or a cenote. A place where the earth breathes. You stop, one hand resting on the rusted railing. The idea of a city growing over a sacred wound is not uncommon. Rome did it, Cairo did it. Teotihuacan may have done it too. Only instead of erasing what came before, they swallowed it. Layer after layer. Until the original heartbeat was buried so deep it could only be felt, not heard. You think again of that slight misalignment between the structures, and suddenly it feels less like a mistake and more like an echo. Like the new builders were reaching for the old foundation but couldn't quite match it. Or didn't dare. You breathe in slowly. The air is cooler here. Less sun, more stone, more memory. Then something catches your eye. Carved into the base of a nearby wall is a glyph, faint but distinct. A figure with open arms and a radiating head. Not a god, a guide. The kind of image meant to say, you are entering something important. Be quiet. You stare at the figure longer than you should, your thoughts drifting. You wonder if it's a coincidence that no written records from Teotihuacan remain. No named kings, no personal inscriptions, just symbols, artifacts, walls that seem to say everything and nothing at once. Maybe that's the real mystery here. Not what they hid, but why they left no voice behind. You run your hand along the smooth slope of stone, marveling not at its height, but its stillness. The Moon Temple rises behind you, but your attention is on what lies beneath. You've read the papers. You've seen the scan overlays. Ground-penetrating radar doesn't lie, it just doesn't explain. What it found here? A shape beneath the shape. A structure buried inside the structure. A pyramid inside a pyramid. And possibly another one beneath that. You step around to the northern platform and crouch near a spot marked with faint chalk. To a tourist, it's nothing, but you know this is where the radar first caught the echo. Sharp, geometric, wrong. Not bedrock, not a tunnel. Something symmetrical, something massive. You imagine it now, ancient builders erecting the first structure. Not to be seen, but to be buried. Why would anyone do that? Build something only to hide it? Historians offer guesses. Some say each ruler built over the last to assert power. Others think it was spiritual, a symbolic layering, like wrapping sacred knowledge in stone. But there's a third theory, quieter, avoided in official papers, that the first pyramid was the real one, and the others? Shells, seals. You descend the nearby slope and reach a low corner where excavation stopped years ago. The earth here is thick, packed, too compact for natural soil. You scrape it with your finger and see mica glint back at you. Again, always mica. And where there's mica, there's mystery. The earliest structure, the innermost one, is slightly misaligned. Just a few degrees, but it's enough. Enough to disrupt the symmetry, enough to feel wrong, enough to suggest that something underneath was already there when the others were built. Maybe they weren't building up. Maybe they were building around. You picture the layering in your mind like a Russian doll made of obsidian, limestone, and silence. What's at the core? And more importantly, why bury it? Back outside, you squint into the sun, the air now buzzing with heat and distant chatter. The sacred hush has given way to the sound of present-day life. Tour guides reciting memorized lines, camera shutters flapping like mechanical wings. And yet, despite the noise, the mystery still hums quietly beneath it all. You feel it in your ribs, in the stone, in the spaces no one's quite figured out yet. You wander to the far end of the plaza, where a series of small, square platforms rests in near-perfect alignment. Most visitors overlook them. They look at a glance like nothing, bare foundations. But their layout matches astronomical patterns, especially lunar phases. Some believe these were altars for offerings, timed to celestial events. Others think they were observational points. But one theory is more poetic, that the entire temple complex was a model of the universe. Teotihuacan, some say, wasn't a city at all. It was a map. Not symbolic, not metaphorical, but literal. A cosmogram. A diagram of the sky as the people understood it, embedded in stone. Historians still argue whether the measurements support this theory. The proportions between the Pyramid of the Sun, the Moon Temple, and the Citadel at the other end of the Avenue of the Dead seem too precise for coincidence. The distances mirror certain celestial relationships. Some alignments even track with solstices and equinoxes. You sit on one of the smaller platforms, its stone surprisingly cool against the heat of the day. You look down the avenue, then up at the sky. The city begins to feel less like a place and more like a clock. One that tracks time not in hours or minutes, but in stars and seasons. It's humbling. You remember reading once that the name Teotihuacan means the place where gods were born, not where people lived, not where battles were fought, but where gods were born. That's a very specific brand of ambition, and yet no one knows what the original inhabitants called it. The name comes from the Aztecs, who found the city long after it was abandoned. To them, it was already mythic, already sacred, already other. You tap your fingers on the stone beside you and try to imagine living here. What it would be like to wake up under the shadow of a pyramid, to time your meals to the sun, to feel your life pulled along by constellations. Would the stars feel closer? Would the gods? You rise and walk toward a shaded archway that leads to one of the residential compounds nearby. Most tourists don't visit these. They want the temples, the big shots. But the quiet homes, the painted walls, the tiled floors, the discarded bones, they tell another story. Inside, the temperature drops again. The walls are faded, but you can still see outlines of color. Red bands, blue swirls, a serpent coiled into the shape of a question mark. On one panel, a line of figures dance toward a flame that floats in the air. Are they celebrating? Summoning? Running? You step closer and notice something else. Embedded in the plaster is a thin line of black sand. Intentional, not natural. Maybe symbolic, maybe magical, maybe both. A fringe group of researchers once proposed that Teotihuacan had a kind of energy grid, microsites that were charged by geomagnetic forces. They were dismissed mostly, but part of you wonders what they felt when they stood here. Fingers pressed to the wall, heart beating in sync with something they couldn't explain. You place your palm on the faded plaster, it's warm, not electrically, just warmly human. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the scent of dust and lichen settle into your memory. Somewhere in the silence, a bird chirps twice. You smile. Even the ghosts have company. And then you open your eyes and see it. Another glyph, scratched faintly into the wall near the floor. A spiral, tight and purposeful, drawn not with a tool but with a fingertip. It matches a symbol you saw earlier near the tunnel site. A path, a descent, a coil inward, like a story turning back on itself. You stare at the spiral on the wall, your breath held without realizing it. There's a pull to it, an inward gravity that makes you want to trace it with your own fingertip. You resist the urge, though just barely. Instead, you crouch closer, narrowing your eyes to examine the crude groove. It's shallow, worn, but unmistakably intentional. You've seen spirals before, of course. In petroglyphs, in ancient carvings, on ceramic shards pulled from the ground with careful brushes and gloved hands. But here, in this quiet corner of a Teotihuacan dwelling, it feels personal. Like someone left a signature or a clue. There's a theory you recall that spiral motifs in Mesoamerican art symbolized water, wind, or the underworld. But in certain contexts, they might represent consciousness, a movement inward. Not a journey across land, but through the self. Historians still argue whether the spiral was meant to indicate a sacred path, a literal tunnel, or something metaphysical. And maybe that ambiguity is the point. Maybe not all mysteries are meant to be solved, only experienced. You rise from the floor and exit the chamber, blinking against the light outside. The plaza greets you like a held breath finally released. The wind stirs the dust into lazy spirals of its own, as if mimicking what's been etched in stone. As you wander again toward the base of the Moon Temple, your mind drifts back to what lies beneath it. The sealed tunnel, the strange artifacts, the unnerving symmetry. But more than that, you keep circling back to the bones. Because yes, they found bones. Human remains in tight, curled positions. Arms crossed, knees drawn, arranged with care. Not stacked or scattered, posed, as if sleeping or waiting. One of the archaeologists described them as intentional burials with ambiguous purpose. That's academic code for we have no idea what's going on here. And there's more. Near one of the skeletal remains was a carved obsidian disc, flat and unmarked. Nearby, a bundle of feathers tied with copper wire. And beside that, a small clay bowl filled with fine yellow powder. No one knows what it was. The lab results were inconclusive. It wasn't pollen, it wasn't pigment, but it was something. You imagine the scene. A low-lit chamber flickering with the shadows of torchlight. A priest, or maybe a scientist, depending on how you see it, lays the body down with reverence. Places the disc, the feathers, the bowl, each object serving a role in a ritual long forgotten. What were they trying to do? Appease a god? Seal a doorway? Map a dream? You remember reading a translation from a nearby culture's text? Not Teotihuacan, but close. Only through the quiet bones may the path be found. You don't know what it means. Maybe no one does. But here, beneath the Moon Temple, with bones and mica and sealed tunnels, it feels like that sentence might be less poetic and more practical. You pause near a low, retaining wall, 1 foot propped on a step. The air is thick now, not with heat, but memory. You can feel the layers below. Not just physically, but temporally. Like you're walking on chapters stacked in reverse. Time here is sediment. And somewhere deep in those layers is the beginning. Or the end. Or maybe both. You press your hand against the nearest stone. It's warm from the sun, yes, but also from you. For a moment, you imagine that energy traveling downward through the stone, through the foundations, through the sealed tunnel, until it brushes the very thing buried below. Not waking it, just reminding it that someone still remembers. You step back, dusting your palms. Your fingers are stained gray now, traced with the memory of a city still keeping its silence. You look around, half expecting the wind to rise again, to answer. But it stays still, watching. And somewhere in your chest, the spiral turns. You continue walking, this time following the narrow causeway that leads away from the Moon Temple's base and into the remnants of what might have been the heart of the residential elite. Palaces, administrative buildings, or maybe sanctuaries of knowledge now reduced to cracked walls and careful guesses. The ground beneath your feet shifts from tightly laid stone to compacted earth. You step lightly, almost ceremonially, as if afraid to wake whatever still dreams here. Around you, fragments of painted murals cling to time-worn walls. Faded reds and ochres, lines that once pulsed with meaning now curling into ambiguity. Then you see it. A corridor flanked by a series of low archways, just tall enough to stoop under. Each leads to a small chamber, and each one, strangely, has a different floor pattern. In one, stones laid in perfect squares. In another, swirling spirals. In the last, a mosaic of jagged obsidian shards. You hesitate before stepping into the obsidian chamber. The air here is distinctly cooler. You swear for a second it smells like rain, even though the sky is clear. There's a theory, an obscure one, that some chambers in Teotihuacan were designed as resonance chambers. Acoustic testing done in the 1990s revealed that certain rooms amplified sound in unusual ways. A whisper spoken in the corner could be heard clearly across the room, but only if you stood in exactly the right spot. You try it, you whisper the word, "awake." The sound disappears instantly, no echo, no reply. Historians still argue whether this was intentional engineering or a happy accident. But in a city so precise, so unnaturally ordered, you find it hard to believe they left something like that to chance. You step carefully around the obsidian inlays. They sparkle slightly in the dim light, catching reflections that aren't there. One piece is carved with something faint. A spiral again. This time, double-looped, like a mirrored path. You crouch to examine it closer and notice a small copper wire embedded at the base. It's barely thicker than thread, but it coils under the stone like a root. Was it decorative? Functional? Ritualistic? And if it connected something, what was on the other end? You straighten up, your spine tingling with the thought. You glance around the room again. No obvious doors, no passages. Just the sense that things in this city were never quite what they seemed. Then there's the mica again. In 2008, deep beneath the Pyramid of the Sun, another layer of mica was found. Perfectly cut, embedded beneath flooring that no one would ever see. It wasn't decorative, it was hidden. Which begs the question, who was it for? Here in the obsidian chamber, you run your hand along the low ceiling. You find a groove, slight but intentional, cut in a circular pattern, like the stone was once meant to be removed or rotated. You don't try it, of course. You're not here to disturb, just to listen. So you sit, quietly, letting the room breathe around you. And then, just for a moment, you hear it. Not sound exactly, not words, but a pulse. A hum so low and deep you feel it more in your bones than your ears. It vanishes the second you focus on it, like it didn't want to be known, just felt. You sit perfectly still for another full minute. Nothing, just silence, just shadows. You exhale slowly, whisper "thank you," and leave the chamber with a strange sense of having asked a question you didn't realize you'd voiced. And somewhere beneath the stone, something shifts. Just a little.
You emerge from the obsidian chamber into full sunlight, blinking as your eyes adjust. The shadows cling to your thoughts, refusing to dissipate even as the warmth returns to your skin. You walk slower now, not because you're tired, but because you're beginning to realize how much of Teotihuacan is built on layers, not just of stone, but of intention. To your right, beyond a partially reconstructed platform, sits a small, unassuming hill. It doesn't draw much attention, No signs, no railings, just a quiet mound like many others scattered across the site. But archaeologists discovered that beneath some of these natural hills lie even older structures, possibly ceremonial, possibly just forgotten. This one, they suspect, might be older than the Moon Temple itself. You approach the base and crouch. The ground is uneven here, and a narrow crack in the earth runs along the edge. You place your hand beside it, fingers splayed, imagining the soil as skin stretched over ancient bones. There's a theory that this structure, this mound, was the first built in the area. Not the temple, not the avenue, but this. And it was only later that the rest of Teotihuacan grew around it like a shell forming around a pearl. Historians still argue whether it was a cave, a burial mound, or a cosmic marker. In Mesoamerican belief, caves were often portals, mouths to the underworld, places where gods emerged, where souls returned, where truth could hide. You imagine the first builders stumbling upon the site, sensing its energy, and deciding to build around it, not over it, as if the land had made a request. You lie back in the grass, the sky yawning endlessly above. From this low vantage point, the temple looms in your peripheral vision, but you keep your eyes on the clouds. They drift lazily, white against a blue so deep it feels painted. And somewhere beneath you, the old foundation hums its mute, eternal note. You think again about the double spiral in the obsidian floor, and how it mirrors ancient cosmograms from other cultures, Sumerian, Celtic, even Polynesian. Could it be that similar symbols emerged not because of contact, but because of something deeper, something universal? You roll the thought around like a smooth stone in your mind. Maybe some symbols aren't inventions. Maybe they're discoveries. Patterns we keep stumbling onto because they're written into the code. Crumbled wall, but beneath it lies a foundation older than the city itself. Ground scans in 2022 revealed what might be one of the oldest shrines on site, completely encased in the later layers of construction. Maybe. Or maybe you've just tuned into a frequency most people walk right past. You lean back against the stone, watching a bird circle the peak of the moon temple above. It glides in wide arcs. Understood. One catches your eye, a half disc of polished basalt, smooth as glass on one side, rough on the other. Its shape is unmistakably deliberate. It mirrors something from Section 6, the obsidian disc placed beside the burial. Only here, the design is reversed, smooth, facing inward, as if meant to contain, not reflect. You remember a fringe theory mentioned in an old footnote that Teotihuacan was a city built not just to communicate with the cosmos, but to anchor it, that the structures themselves were points of convergence between planes, physical and metaphysical, and that these discs were like plugs, lids, seals. You lift your hand above the basalt surface but do not touch, just hover. You wonder if it remembers where it used to be, what it used to keep in or out.
There's a strange comfort in the idea that ancient architects might have understood things we now call mystical, not as fantasy, but as fact. That spiritual architecture wasn't decorative, it was essential. That every line, every layer, every echo was a lever in a machine we no longer have the keys to. You walk on, passing a stone basin filled with rainwater from the day before. The reflection stares up at you, not distorted, but doubled. Behind your image, the moon temple stands perfectly upright, reversed in the pool. You blink, and the wind stirs the surface. Gone. But for that moment, you weren't standing above Teotihuacan. You were beneath it. And it looked back. You walk with new awareness now, not hurried, but purposeful. Each step a quiet question, each breath a hesitant answer. There's a feeling trailing behind you like a shadow out of sync. Not ominous, just attentive. The city isn't haunting you, it's watching you watch it. You make your way toward a seldom visited compound, tucked near the western boundary of the site. The air here feels different, cooler, shaded by brush that's grown wild between the stones. A wall stands ahead, partially crumbled, but enough remains to show patterns. Painted figures, faint but stubborn, survive on its surface. You lean in. There's a procession. Figures with elongated limbs and odd headpieces. Some hold staffs, others what look like mirrors. Their faces lack detail, only 2 dots in a line, yet somehow they appear focused, alert. They're walking toward a central circle, glowing in the mural with what used to be gold leaf. This wasn't mere decoration, it was instruction. One researcher in an obscure academic journal suggested this mural might depict a ritual of planetary alignment, not metaphorical but literal. That at a certain time when stars met over the valley, a ritual space was activated. Not opened. Activated. Historians still argue whether Teotihuacan was designed with such astronomical precision. But mathematical studies suggest alignments between pyramids mirror Venus cycles, lunar eclipses, and even distant constellations. To call it coincidence seems lazy. To call it superstition feels blind. You walk past the mural and step into the next chamber. Roofless now, but the walls rise high enough to cradle sound. You say nothing, but your footstep echoes differently here. Rounded, hollow. As if below the stone the ground is thinner. Or waiting. There's a raised platform at the far end, waist high, with a shallow depression in its center. Too smooth to be erosion. Too exact to be an accident. You climb up, curious. The center is lined with soot. You exhale softly and imagine a fire once burned here, not for light or warmth, but for signal. A controlled beacon. Flames licking at the dusk as chants filled the air. Not in fear, in memory, or perhaps in warning. You look up. From this angle, the moon temple's peak is visible above the rooftops, and if you tilt your head just right, the sun sets behind it. A perfect line. This chamber, this platform, it was a sight line, an anchor point, a cosmic reminder. You sit, legs dangling, eyes fixed on the horizon. The quiet wraps around you again, a lullaby of stone and sunlight. You think of the obsidian discs, the mica floors, the spiral glyphs. You think of the silence below, and then for the briefest moment you hear it. Not a sound, not exactly. More like a pause in the air, a held breath, a page about to turn. And you realize maybe the point of all this wasn't communication. Maybe it was containment. Teotihuacan didn't try to talk to the stars, it tried to hold them still. And the moon temple? Not a monument, a lock. The sun now rests low against the mountains, casting long golden arms across the Valley of Mexico. Shadows stretch like memories, reaching toward the edges of the moon temple as if the city itself is remembering. Stretching, stirring. You step down from the platform slowly, your soles brushing centuries of settled dust. It occurs to you that you're one of countless who've stood here and wondered. Pilgrims, priests, plunderers, scholars, all of them walked these stones and stared up at this silent city asking, what happened here? But Teotihuacan never answers, instead it shows. You find yourself back on the main avenue. The Avenue of the Dead, as the Aztecs named it, though no one knows what the original name was. The irony is sharp. A place so alive with geometry and vision remembered only in death. You walk its length slowly now, past quiet foundations and worn steps. The moon temple recedes behind you. The pyramid of the sun rises ahead. Between them, the citadel sleeps under layers of stone and centuries of disinterest. But you know now. This was no random triangle of temples. No city for simple living. It was a circuit, a trinity. Each pyramid tuned to a different note. Solar, lunar, terrestrial. The moon temple's tunnel and buried spiral. The sun pyramid's mica flooring, an unknown purpose. And the citadel? Home to the temple of the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, the god of wind, learning, and boundary crossing. You reach a point where all three align in your line of sight. You pause. The city hums around you in heat and quiet. There's a theory that Teotihuacan was never abandoned. It simply went silent. That something was completed, or sealed, or waiting. Historians still argue whether its collapse was due to famine, rebellion, or environmental failure. But you begin to feel that Teotihuacan's true ending wasn't a fall. It was a choice. You crouch near the edge of the avenue and run your fingers across a square tile, cracked, but still locked into the same place it was placed nearly 2,000 years ago. Beneath it might be more. Another tunnel, another glyph, another silence shaped like a secret. You remember something strange. Early accounts from Spanish chroniclers mention lights seen hovering above the ruins, long after the city was already empty. They were dismissed, of course. Dust. Moonlight. Myth. But even now, in the blue wash of evening, as the valley breathes under a blanket of gold, you feel the presence of something still awake beneath the stone. You pass a stela half buried in grass. Its carvings eroded, its message erased, but just barely visible along its curve is the now familiar spiral, and a line, not breaking it, but closing it, like a lock, like a seal. You don't touch it, you don't need to. The story has always been there, etched not in letters, but in layout, in tunnels, in temperature shifts. The whole city was built like a ritual, a layered myth, a puzzle not to be solved but respected. You begin your walk back toward the moon temple, the horizon bruising purple, the wind cooling like a closing book. You don't look over your shoulder, you don't need to. You'll carry this silence with you, and it will hum. And the evening descends softly over Teotihuacan, painting the stones in amber and violet. You walk the Avenue of the Dead one last time, but now each step feels different, like you've become part of a procession that started centuries ago and never truly ended. No chants, no flutes, just your footsteps, falling in time with ghosts. You return to the base of the moon temple where the light now barely touches the upper stones. The plaza is nearly empty. A few silhouettes linger near the edges, quiet, respectful, blurred by distance and fading light. You sit down at the same stone bench as before, facing the temple, the dust swirling faintly in the evening air. The hush has returned deeper now. Not empty, but full. Like the city is waiting again. Or maybe just watching you leave. You think back to the first tunnel, how it descended into the earth with a spiral's patience. To the mica that lined the walls like reflective memory. To the bones, curled in sleep. The artifacts placed not as treasure, but as messages. Symbols, keys. You imagine a final ritual, a priest descending with no return, placing the last item in place, whispering a word that no longer exists in any language. Then sealing the tunnel behind him, one stone at a time. Not to protect us from what's below, but to protect what's below from us. Historians still argue whether this was all ceremonial or scientific, whether the tunnels and chambers were spiritual metaphors or actual machines for interacting with cosmic forces. Whether Teotihuacan was a city, a clock, or a prayer written in stone. But you don't need a conclusion. Some mysteries are their own answers. You stand and dust off your hands. The temple doesn't glow now, it just is. Still, whole. Waiting, and that's enough. As you begin your final walk back to the entrance, the wind rises one last time, cool and constant. You smile, recognizing its voice now. Not words, just presence, just awareness. You reach the gate, turn around, one last glance, and in the quiet hush of twilight, the moon temple only smiles. You're lying down now. The lights are off. The room is cool and quiet. The hum of the fan and the stillness of the air wraps around you like a gentle cloak. Your breath is calm. Your eyes grow heavy. Behind your eyelids, the city lingers. Golden stone, spiral tunnels, and faded glyphs whispering through time. You remember stepping into that ancient silence. A silence that washed, welcomed, and released you. You recall the shimmer of mica, a low hum in the obsidian chamber. silence holds you, like the city, like the stars.